The idea of what Britain is going to be in the world has got to be addressed. The new government has got to decide how big our defence ambitions are going to be. And so that's a more political question. And it's not clear that that will be discussed in the election, but the government after the election has got to make a decision on what they want Britain to do in the world, and that should be the basis then for creating a defence policy that serves that purpose.
To my mind, the big issue for an election is not details about whether you have carriers or not. The big issue for an election is how the nation sees itself. Does it see itself as a major world power in the top 5, which is where we have assumed that we are, certainly since the Falklands and arguably since the end of empire, and that's where they see themselves. We see ourselves as a nation, and then are we prepared to pay for it? Because defence is liable to come undercut, as everything is, apart from international development. And the electorate should, if they are going to commit the nation to being a top nation, put up with the fact that defence can't be slashed if we're going to maintain that. But this is not an issue that the electorate are likely to be presented with by either party, because they're both committed to the United Kingdom as a major power in the Green Paper and in the...
The big immediate issue is that they have to find spending restraints on defence. The present budget is unaffordable by at least £30 billion in the long term. So that has to be addressed, and the defence budget has got to be brought within the constraints of new spending restrictions as a result of the financial crisis. If we look at the three main political parties, the fact is you can't really put much daylight between Labour and Conservative policies on defence and security.
Tories, as you would expect, I think, have highlighted enlightened national interest, to use William Hague's words, rather than force for good, which was very much the mantra of New Labour, but was also used in the Green Paper as something that Britain will go on wanting to do. So there is some shift, but it's still enlightened self-interest, which merely means, to my mind, that it suits Britain well for the world to be a better place, and we use the military to help make sure that it is a better place. The Conservatives have a particular issue, of course, over the European Union, and partnerships have so far been presented by them more in terms of binational partnerships, the United States and specifically France, rather than Europe as a whole, because once you get into Europe, it's European armies and all of that. And my own view on that is that the big issue is that the United Kingdom needs to have capabilities that are coherent within Europe, but not necessarily the European Union, but NATO when the United States is busy elsewhere. So it doesn't matter how the force planning is done. At the end of the day, European powers need to have substantial military capability to discharge their responsibilities for the strategic bargain with the United States and for things that the United States is too busy to do or which aren't priorities for them.
The party that offers some genuine alternatives are the Liberal Democrats, because they can afford to, and they historically have taken a different view. So they have a different view of the nuclear deterrent. They have a different view of Britain's alliance relationships. They're much more European orientated. And they're more orientated to what most people would say are softer security approaches, which is the approach of thinking more about conflict prevention and the use of diplomacy as opposed to military force. Now, the Liberals can afford to take that position because they're not likely to hold power, but if they do end up in some sort of arrangement, in a hung parliament with some sort of coalition government for a while, then those views, those really quite different alternative views of defence policy, may become significant. But that's the only area within British political thinking, mainstream thinking, where you can find any real difference.
Of course, the
Conservatives have talked in more holistic terms about a defence and security review. What the Labour Party would say was, we already approach it holistically. Look at the national security strategy and the NSID structure within the cabinet system and so on. The Conservatives, although they speak holistically, they've also made it clear, both privately and publicly, that they're not going to be wholesale reformers of the bureaucratic system, simply because the costs of doing that are so high you spend all your time reorganising. At the end of it, you've still got to do the job. And so the Conservatives are not looking to sweep away departments and create huge new structures. What they're talking about is doing things differently within the present structures. So again, although the rhetoric is a bit different between the Conservatives wanting to sound as if they've got a better holistic grip than the present government, actually both parties, both government and the opposition, are trying to take a holistic grip of defence and security, and neither of them are committed to big wholesale organisational changes in the next couple of years.